Gupta, Director, ARCOP Associates. Could you please tell us about your background, educational, and how did you start your architectural practice, ARCOP Associates?
Okay, so primarily after the schooling, I took up architecture. I would say my inspiration was my father. He was running his own office. He was an architect. So that was that is where my love for architecture began. Then just so that time in Delhi we just had this one institute called School of Planning and Architecture, which is now an institute of national importance. So I joined there, and interestingly, after the graduation, it is very normal for the son to join his father's company. But I wanted to explore. So for that reason, I started, working in some other offices, and there was, so I remember the first job that I took was with an architect who was into mud architecture, mud and bamboo architecture. So that was, purely for excitement and fun. That I took up that job, did some very interesting work there. Then realized that you also need to learn some mainstream architectural work. So then after that I joined a firm, or rather let me say the one of the grandmasters of Indian architecture, Mr. Joseph Allenstein. So Mr. Stein was an American, but he had spent most of his career and his life in India, and he's done some exemplary work. So I treat him as my guru, and so I worked there with him and his younger partners. And again, that is where I got to learn, the detailing. So Stein's office was known for its level of construction detailing that they used to do there. And they had just finished the India Habitat Center, which is a landmark project in Delhi. And the whole office was buzzed with a lot of energy. And so that's where I really got to, you could say, learn the skill for architecture. And
know that you are coming from such a background with SPA and architect Stein, one of the masters of architects, architecture in India. Yes. And please tell us about what was the inspiration. Like, your father was there, of course, but the kind of sustainable architecture you are doing at present. What is the inspiration behind this?
So Renu, I think it has been a journey of evolution. Frankly speaking, my father used to do a certain kind of work, and I used to love that. But when I, did my education and then further on with these work stints that I had, and finally my third job was in ARCOP. So, ARCOP is not my company. ARCOP is a very old company. Yes. It is started way back in Canada, in Montreal, 1954. And so I joined this company like a regular employee. And I would say it is probably one of the most unique companies in India, where it has operated like a professional organization, like a corporate organization. And today I am one of the senior most directors in the company. So I have grown from being an employee to now, virtually running the company, you could say. And, and that is how the history has been. So I would say, to answer your question, it has been a journey of evolution, wherein I have been lucky that I have been getting, in college we had some very good teachers who were great architects, then in my job, first with Neeraj in mud and bamboo, then Mr. Stein, Anurag Chofla, his younger partner. Then in ARCOP, I would say, Mr. Ramesh Khosla. So he was the principal architect, of ARCOP. He is a Canadian. He stays in Canada, but he used to travel to India for the India office. And then our other founder director, Mr. Devashish Guha. So interestingly, both of these gentlemen also happened to be from School of Planning and Architecture. So we had this kind of a culture, very proud of being from Delhi, educated in Delhi. And this is where ARCOP, I would say I started, then enjoying this, this scale of architecture. So Stein's office also, I had tasted a scale, which was, we'd done some large projects, but then ARCOP was at that time also, and now also, that has been our core, I would say, expertise, that we are really experts in handling very large scale architectural work, right? Yeah. So, I mean, when I say large scale, we don't plan townships, we don't plan cities. We do plan townships, but we don't plan whole cities. That is where we, so that's more an urban planning job. But, we do a lot of urban design. So design has been the forte, and that also for very large scale architectural projects. And, and that has just brought in, one challenge after another. And, that is how we've evolved. It's a continuous learning, even today. So I would not name it to one single, episode or one single, it has been a continuous evolution and learning process. That's why
when did you join ARCOP? How long ago it was?
So I had joined ARCOP in 1995.
Oh.
Long time back. So it's been now 28 years.
28 years is a very long time.
That's right.
ARCOP is, as you said, ARCOP is focusing on large scale projects. And could you please specify what the large scale project it is, urban projects, and again, what is your specialization? I mean, when people hear ARCOP in India, is it an educational institutions? Is it residential? What type of project do you do more?
Okay. Very interesting question. So let me answer it the other way around. So I would say, what we don't do is factories. So somehow that is the only building type, I would say, which ARCOP does not do, has not done. And the reason, I guess, is that, it does not have a design input, predominant in that. Other than that, Renu, I would say ARCOP and I myself also. So, I have done with ARCOP 5-star hotels. I have done very high-end real estate projects, ranging from condominiums to large-scale townships, very high-end townships, golf-oriented townships. Then I have done with ARCOP some exemplary higher education institutes, even schools. Then now we are very, very heavily into healthcare. So healthcare portfolio started with the Medanta Hospital.
Okay.
And, that's where the healthcare journey started in India. And, we've not looked back. Now we are involved in some of the most prestigious and premier, healthcare institutes and hospitals in India.
Yes. So you are one of the pioneers in the healthcare sector design.
Yes, right? Healthcare, we are doing some very good work, I would say, in India for the healthcare.
So here again, a lot of talks on sustainable practice and sustainable architecture. According to you, what is actually sustainable architecture and a sustainable practice?
Okay, so sustainable architecture, if I may put it, I think it is very good that we have a very, very strong focus now, in a very directed manner, I would say.
Yeah.
But if you ask me personally, I have always been somewhere or the other very concerned about it, right from the college days. Whether it is energy issues, whether it is, solar passive architecture. So that has always been an interest for me. And right from day one, in all our buildings, so there was always an attempt, I would say, with, to respect the solar orientation. So, in a hot tropical climate like ours, if you respect sun, I would say not just respect sun, but we were right from day one, even when there was no concept of green buildings as such. We were harnessing sun. We were, so there was total respect for sun in terms of the fundamental planning of the building.
Okay.
And then in terms of the basic principles of, we were making projects which were educational institutes which were non-air conditioned. So when you rely on natural ventilation, in any case, I think there's nothing more sustainable than that. Why should you air condition if you can make a naturally cooled environment? So I think from days when there was no talk about green buildings, there was no, IGBC in India, there was no Griha. We were practicing, energy efficient solar passive architecture even from that times. And now, obviously, now it is, at a very different level. I remember when solar photovoltaic, when I started proposing it in my projects, the payback period used to come to 15 years.
Yeah.
Even then I used to very heavily profess for it.
Okay.
Now it is fantastic. Now, you are looking at a payback period of 5 years.
Yeah.
So it is highly feasible. It is a very feasible technology. So overall, I would say the mindset, we didn't have to change. It is just that earlier we used to do it out of our passion.
Right.
Now we are doing it in a more structured manner.
Yeah. So still I find that in Indian projects, when you are talking about photovoltaic, and usually it goes on the roof only. We are not using it on the facade when you are looking at a very large scale project, like for example, a hospital, which can be so huge and can utilize the full potential of sunlight. So
yes, you are right. I think I would say that on the facade, there are issues of effectiveness and viability.
Right.
So when it comes to the private sector client, they are very smart. They always want to optimize and balance things out, which is a good thing to do. So they are able to, so for that reason, unless or until one wants to do a show off, which it has not worked out in private sector till now. Government sector, it's a different way of working altogether. Now, it's if you are talking about one odd building like a Ministry of Environment headquarters, that's another thing. But the moment you want to include it in the mainstream, government has a totally different way of implementing solar photovoltaic. They have this other renewable energy department from where, you get it built. So most of our projects, interestingly, what is happening is that we propose it, we integrate it, and then finally the solar photovoltaic gets installed after many years.
Yeah.
So, this process takes a long time. And in that scenario, it is very difficult to, do it on the facade.
Okay.
So it has been, I would say, issues of practical challenges in government, how to implement it. And then, and in the private sector, it is still a viability issue, feasibility issue.
So you have done a lot of projects, including like what you said, the Vedanta hospital, healthcare sector, institutional projects. You have done residential and commercial, hospitality, civic infrastructure, etc. So how would you define your design process for facades and fenestration in your projects when you are um, meeting with various design aspects of all these different types of projects? Each one is different from other. And because our magazine is focusing on facade and fenestration, so we would like to hear from you.
Yeah, so I think it's I think we need to go back to fundamentals of architecture a little bit to answer this question.
Okay.
So you see, in all my designs and in all what I have learned from Mr. Khosla or Stein, that it is a integrated holistic process of design that is followed. We never think facade separately and the building planning separately. Whether it is, even if it is a hotel, there is always a central concept that is in mind. So we always used to say that first write your story. Write just in as little possible words as possible as to what is your concept for this project, right? So that is what guides then everything. So I remember I started working on this JP Palace Hotel, Agra, which concept has been designed by Mr. Khosla. Then I became the lead architect from ARCOP. So Mr. Khosla, and he used to tell us, and then we imbibed that concept that it was to be inspiration from Fatehpur Sikri, the famous monument, in Fatehpur Sikri. So the fort, Fatehpur Sikri Fort, and the fort has this urban design of the entire fort is red sandstone, and that's the, and then just the Salim Chishti tomb, the tomb of the Prophet, that is in white marble. So that became the inherent concept that that is how the hotel will be, the entire. So literally it is that it is just one material, red sandstone cladding, that was done everywhere. So as young architects, also wanted to try out a lot of things, but it was more a exercise of disciplining all of us that it is only one material, only the central pavilions are pure white marble. So white marble and glass. So there was obviously glass had come in as a modern material. So that was the concept. Similarly, I would say when we now latest. So I've done this. Recently finished AIMS Bilaspur.
AIMS Bilaspur. Okay.
That's right. So this is the state level AIMS in Himachal Pradesh.
Okay.
So here again, right from the beginning, the concept was that we wanted to do a modern interpretation of the traditional Himachali architecture.
Right.
So always in mind was that obviously one would end up using a lot of glass. Glass becomes, I always treat glass as a medium, not as, very rarely we do express glass, as, but then, so glass almost becomes like water, a neutral medium, you could say. Then other than glass, the solid surfaces are what start speaking, So solid surfaces, we wanted to recreate the feel of the natural stone. But, at the same time, did not want to use the natural stone because of the environment issue. So then we recreated those patterns that feel in glass reinforced concrete. So we designed these glass reinforced concrete panels and we, use that as a dry cladding material. And then similarly, we developed panels for the roof also. And, now project is just recently finished. Horticulture is still, taking shape. So, but we've, again, luckily achieved with good level of success, what we started with. So this, in a way, gives you, rough. Okay, now we had sent you sun coat.
Sun coat projects.
Right. So sun coat, that is where glass comes in as an expression. So, the idea was that in one of our golf township projects in Greater Noida, we created a urban design such that these sun coat towers are literally sitting in middle of the golf course.
Okay.
So, that is where it came in, that if you have a house like that, in a high-rise apartment like that, obviously you would want to see 360 degrees.
Right.
Why would you want to not see anything? Everything is great. So that is where this concept of literally a cylindrical glass tube came in. So that became an expression. So overall, that has been the point that has sort of become like a fulcrum for us.
Okay.
And everything went on to reinforce that. So that is like a pure glass expression, I would say.
So you have done another project, which is the police headquarters in Hyderabad.
Right.
So we received the photographs of that too. If you could explain a little bit more on the project.
Yeah. So, Renu, police headquarters, I would say, was a very interesting, very challenging project. And I remember, so we started working on it in 2015.
Yeah.
So long time back. It took a long time to get constructed, I think, for administrative reasons, not for any other reasons. So we, the aspirations were so high. This, it was actually not just the police headquarters. I think the CM, Honorable CM KCR, so he wanted to make, a unique, iconic signature building, on the highest point of Banjara Hills.
All right.
So that was the point. He said, now police headquarters is a need, that is a function.
Yeah.
But otherwise, and then in addition to police headquarters, it is actually the central command center. So idea was that the entire city was being networked by CCTV camera, and this is where the feed comes in. So there is a very large NASA kind of a video wall. When then the central command center has all of these other departments, 40 odd departments of the Hyderabad city. So idea, they said that, let it be a futuristic building and something. So, it was just, they were sort of, so excited and pounding us that, make it something that is out of the world. So we must have made, I would say, around 20 design options.
Oh my God, that's quite a lot.
That's right. So interestingly, I have given a talk in the Indian Institute of Architects, the Telangana chapter in Hyderabad. That was 2.5 years back, though prior to COVID. So where I just showed all of those options, so because it was all architects, I said, this was the journey. And I would also say that for the first time, we were also faced with this challenge that we've done many after that, in fact, interestingly. But that was the first challenge, that as a high-rise building, there is a state government asking for us to make an icon. So what we also did was that we picked up the iconic high-rise buildings around the world, and we very scientifically analyzed them, as to what are the virtues. So, we picked up buildings like Shard in London, that was just recently completed. There was then the Shanghai Tower was picked up. So we picked up, St. Mary Anne of Norman Foster. So all of these now very well-known iconic buildings, we picked up, and, we analyzed them literally on criteria as to what is the consistent thing, what is making it, iconic, popular. So one thing we realized was that glass is a very universal material.
Yeah.
That is something that immediately came across, that, everyone is using a lot of glass, so obviously it is a very high-tech modern expression. It makes the building very light in its feel.
Right.
And it is, and though a lot of people had reservations, even the police team had not made even a low-rise glass building till now. So they were very concerned, and everybody starts worrying about maintenance when it comes to glass for some reason. So I had to prove it to them that, here is this LIC building in Delhi, done by great Mr. Charles Correa. And that is the only building that still looks fresh. So as long as you are able to clean glass, there are systems for it. Glass building is the best. Any other material starts aging and wearing out. So, anyway, that was one of the points specific to facade, I would say. Then there were other things that started coming in that, obviously all of these buildings were to some extent symmetrical, though they were very interesting forms. So symmetry became a kind of a guiding principle. Then, also what came out was that buildings like Grand Arch in Paris, where they create a larger than life, statement. So in a way, it becomes an urban symbol. So it's not just tower or a twin tower. The way Grand Arch makes that bridge, and that whole form becomes like a gateway form. That suddenly makes a different kind of a statement and a very timeless one. So I think from there, these thoughts started coming in for this option, I would say, wherein the client also prompted us. I remember Mr. Reddy was one of the additional commissioners. So he said, why don't, the function called for a twin tower. But he said that, since Hyderabad is famous for Charminar,
right,
why don't you think of 4 towers in some manner? So, fundamentally today the building is twin tower, but then at the other 2 corners, we have placed these elevator cores. So one of them is a elevator cores, lift.
Okay.
So they are basically lift cores. So one of the lift core is used by the VIPs because there is a helipad on top of the building, just for the helipad use. And the other lift core tower is used by the general public to go to the museum, police museum, on the 20th floor. So anyway, we were able to find these functions. So, that this is where now the strong form started emerging. That, there are these 2 towers which are functional towers, and, the other 2 towers which are more like pins going up. And then they have a mega sort of a gateway kind of a form on top, and then obviously then there was another very interesting aspect to it. So Telangana, Honorable CM, is heavily into Vastu. So there was, government at that time still has, government has a Vastu consultant. So, at least he's not like a minister, but he's a, so government had a Vastu consultant. Honorable CM himself is a great Vastu expert. So Vastu also became they wanted the building, Vastu requires the building to be absolute north-south oriented, while the site was at an angle. So we carved out the maximum possible footprint that the building could have. And literally that footprint is extruded up, and then hollowed out. So it's a very interesting, you could say, sculpture made by, scooping. So there is this technique in architecture and sculpting that, you make a volume and then you scoop out volumes. So, it's what we call as voids and spaces.
Okay.
So, we started, so it was a very interesting exercise from that point of view. And, and then the whole idea obviously was to make a icon for the city. And now I feel very happy, whenever I am in Hyderabad and driving from the elevated road from the airport, you see this building, at least the silhout, and it does the job.
Yes.
That it announces itself from that distance.
It's a fantastic project. And it's good to know that even some of the governments are interested in doing such projects with a lot of interest. In fact, inculcating our earlier practices like Vastu, which is very eco-friendly.
Right.
Many environmental friendly buildings were built with Vastu principles.
Right.
So, I want to know, how was the experience working with the government, and you have been working with people like Vedanta also. So, was it tough?
Working with the government?
Yes. Getting approval and going through all these red tapes.
Well, I would say, I've had a varied experience, I would say. It is not just one statement that I can give. Fortunately, the kind of projects that I have been involved in, I have got massive support from the government side. Okay. So, maybe we are lucky. We only got involved in projects which were iconic in nature.
Yeah.
We got selected because of our quality of work. So we commanded a respect. That it's still happening today also. So in terms of, I would say, the design and the approval of the design, we've got a lot of support from the seniors in the government.
So the vision is all changing now.
Sorry?
The vision of the government, everything is changing with time now, we should say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the governments are, so there is a strong desire I see in all the government, politicians especially, that everybody wants to use architecture to make a statement.
Right.
I think that is I've been involved with the UP government, with Hyderabad, obviously. So Hyderabad, after the police headquarters, we were again virtually invited to do the image tower. So that is coming up. So that is coming up in
which is this one? Please.
Image tower.
Image tower. Okay. Yeah. What kind of project it is?
So image tower is actually like a incubation center and office building for the basically graphics and gaming industry, or the gaming and animation industry.
Okay.
So we all know Bahubali. Most of it was shot in Hyderabad itself. The entire animation.
Right.
And Hyderabad is world over very famous for its gaming and animation industry. So lot of the famous Avatar movie and lot of these VFX work is done in Hyderabad. So Honorable KTR, CM's son, the IT minister, this building is his brainchild. And with him, I literally worked on this design. And again, there are stories behind it. We made 3 options. Initially, we made 2 options, and Honorable Minister asked his team to vote which option to go for. And interestingly, there was an absolute split vote. So that's when he said, Nitin, why don't you come up with a third option? Because we can't decide.
So that got approved, right? The third option.
Yeah, then the third option got approved. So third option was a bullseye, I would say. So it is, it is probably everybody takes to it the moment, you see it. So this is, and it is also like extension of the philosophy of the police headquarters tower. It's like a sequel to that almost, wherein this also is like a Charminar. It is a set 4 towers, but then this is more ambitious, I would say, because it belongs to the the animation and gaming industry. Yeah. Okay. So it's like a big IT park, you could say, and now there is a private developer. So government actually wanted to do it like a PPP mode. So there is a private developer who is constructing it. Government has a certain space, and there on the ground there are these film studios and incubation facilities for the for the gaming and animation industry. So this and then we were involved in Guwahati with the state government of Assam, to do an iconic project for them. And so I think it is more like a trend that's catching up, and especially using high-rise buildings, because high-rise buildings make a very strong political statement also.
Right.
So yeah.
So in Uttar Pradesh also, you said you're working with the ministry in some of the projects.
Yeah, Uttar Pradesh, we worked on this project called the IAS Academy. This was long time back. Unfortunately, it has run into a problem because of because the government change of government. So this was a project which was started by the Akhilesh Yadav government.
Okay.
So Mr. Akhilesh Yadav was the person behind it, but now the new government is probably not so interested. So it requires a political will to close it.
All right.
But this was not a high-rise building. This was more like a campus.
So again, we wish to know about few things like, the climatic conditions of Hyderabad with the dry heat. And whereas if you are making a project in some other temperate part of India, the approach to facade would be totally different. You said you believe in going local as far as possible while you are using materials, right? And incorporating glass at the same time. So could you please tell us about your approach to facade, looking at the type of the project and the locality?
Sure. So, Renu, it is, I would say now this is something peculiar of a high-rise building. High-rise, as you keep going higher, especially with respect to facade, I think the technology and the criteria of design start demanding, a kind of performance with respect to wind, with respect to earthquake, the kind of demands that are there.
Yeah.
So, one has to rely on established systems of facades. And also, what I have come to realize is that by and large, we need to use materials which are inherently light.
Right.
So I cannot think of using a lot of sandstone, for example, the way we used in the Agra hotel, the JP Palace Agra. So you can't do that on a multi-storied high-rise building. It tends to be very, very precarious and risky. Even for that matter, we used a lot of granite cladding in one of our corporate towers in Connaught Place, Delhi, which is so that's called the NEI Barakhamba Road. That is one of the most elegant towers in Connaught Place, in fact. And but we realized
NEI Barakhamba Road.
That's right. It's called NEI Barakhamba Road. It is so this was made for Birla, group, and so that's a pretty old project. It was, so even after that we realized that granite also had, a lot of sort of challenges when it came to selection, and its fundamental, waterproofing and issues like that. So effectively, as I'm saying, we started zeroing in on lightweight, claddings, on a lot of glass. But then, as you are rightly saying, when it comes to these sun issues, so glass, is something that if you have direct sunlight falling on glass, it is very difficult to stop heat from coming in. So that is a challenge that in a hot climate, with strong sun, whether it is Hyderabad or Delhi or is a big challenge.
Yeah.
And we realized this when handling these glass buildings. And so if you notice in the police headquarters, in fact, on the southwest corner, there is a second layer of glass added. There is a skin, literally, of glass. That becomes our architectural expression. It is of a different color. And, obviously, design element was, inherent to the architectural form. But, this was another idea that southwest being the most difficult corner, let us put this another layer of glass, which becomes almost like a screen. So, as glass, the moment the sun rays pass through the glass, the short waves get converted into, long waves. And the heat, gets trapped inside. But if you are able to put another layer of glass, then, it just stays out. So that was one trick, I would say, wherein just by putting two layers, one is able to keep the vision, but at the same time, sort of, it's like wearing sunglasses. That's so, you kind of shade yourself.
The intensity.
That's right. Both in terms of glare as well as the heat intake. So I think it's a, I would say that, and then somewhere we have used these actually shading screens as an expression. So, it's a mix of, one has to just very sensitively do solar studies and, then accordingly, then start giving treatment to the glass. So a lot of our expression is, yes, first medium as glass, and then the shading, on top of glass, that becomes an expression.
So it's so interesting to know that. But when you talk about all these studies, can you please just list out the studies which are done before you design a facade? Just to see what all studies has to be made, like the sun diagram and.
Okay, so I'll take now example of the latest project that we are working on.
Right.
So we are working on AIMS Delhi, redevelopment.
All right.
So AIMS Delhi, you see, we are not demolishing the existing hospital buildings. It is only portions where low-rise bungalows exist for the staff.
Right.
For staff, we are creating high-rise buildings, and then in these locations, we are going to make now new high-rise, modern, healthcare towers, let us say. So in AIMS Delhi, I would say that we were able to utilize the techniques of Revit and simulation to the maximum.
Revit simulation, okay.
Yeah, that's right. So we, finally what the team was doing was literally showing me, on a Revit model, using sometimes SketchUp also, combination of Revit and SketchUp to, exactly simulate as to, what are the surfaces which are getting the intense sun, which definitely need shading.
All right.
So they were able to very accurately tell me that. And, as an inherent part of the design, then we started using shading mediums there, as a part of the expression. But then there was another very interesting aspect that we also wanted to harvest daylight, because these were public buildings, academic buildings, so we wanted to harvest daylight also.
Right.
So at the same time, so on the north and the east side, simulations were being done with respect to how much penetration the sun is able to keep, because these are also very fat plates, of the, they are not like, some plates are like 25-30 meters deep, and you have like a OPD tower. So there are people waiting, there are waiting lobbies. So definitely you want, if we can get natural light there, nothing like it. They are predominantly functions that happen during the day. So there we were doing studies of daylight simulation, and also going to the extent, now this may not be your topic about facade, but then, everything is integrated. So if we were not stopping there, even the interior finishes were being tested with respect to, how to, maximize that light through reflection. So, and finally, we were, along with our, the, IGBC green building consultant, we were also checking out various glass in terms of the glass specifications as to what results are coming in. So whether it is, visible light transmission versus the, what you say as the shading coefficient. So, all of those balances were being, tested continuously. So I think finally I would say that, if this is probably going to be the set pattern now from here onwards. I would admit that this is not the level of studies that we did for, initial in 2015 when we were working on police headquarters, though they were more with, fundamental knowledge and instinct. But now you have tools where you can very, very scientifically determine, fundamentally what is the need.
So if you could tell me of one of your signature project, or you can call it as a milestone project, in the recent times, which will be that one, that project?
Okay, so recent times, how would you want to define the recent times?
You said you started in 15, and then, earlier. So in somewhere in the middle 15, you made this police headquarters. After that. So you said...
So after, you were saying after 2015?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you see, no, but there is something interesting. Police headquarters started in 2015.
Yeah.
But it got finished very late. That I was telling you that. Yeah. So police headquarters just got finished last year only.
Right.
So from that point of view, it's a very recent project, and right. I've been getting a lot of appreciation for that. Thankfully, so thank God for it. So I would, amongst the high-rise buildings, I would say high-rise office buildings, public buildings. Yes, police headquarters has been, quite a landmark project for me also. I would, and finally, hats off to government also that they have, got it executed to a very good degree.
Where do you see ARCOP as a design team in, say, 2030?
2030 is, I would say, very near. It's not far. Now that
beyond 2030, maybe 2050.
Yeah. So what I think we ought to be looking at now. 27 years down the road, I see myself more, working like Mr. Khosla does. So it's more like a mentor, and it's not actively involved, though one cannot tell the future, but the young team members, I would say, is I see them now very, very handy with the computers. So it is, I'm not of that generation that I just think and draw on computer. In fact, I don't. I rarely use computer for designing. But then the younger architects, more and more so, they are heavily into computer as a tool.
Design,
or yeah. Yeah, I would say, so there are, parametric architecture is something that is now much easier to do.
Right.
So, when Franco Gehry was doing it, or Zaha Hadid were doing it in their earlier times, they didn't have, software that they could support them. So they were using, I remember, softwares from NASA to analyze their forms and things. Now there are, softwares are so versatile that, so I think uh, it is going to be a lot of fun with respect to, forms becoming very adventurous, and our simulation tools, giving us a lot of scope for testing and redoing things, perfecting things, I would say. And so I think that's where we, would be really heading at. And but then ARCOP's strength has always been, to make functionally very strong buildings. So that, will remain. Then ARCOP's strength has also been to make buildings which are very well detailed. So, that is another thing that I would say as a tradition will continue. But then I see us getting more and more adventurous with time.
Okay. What is your advice to the young architects of India, young and upcoming architects? That in the that we must use more tools to improve design, something similar to that, other than that?
So, Renu, my advice has been, and advice, would be that I think the tools will keep evolving. I think one consistent thing that you need in this profession, without which I think, you can't do extraordinary and very good work, great work, is passion. I think that passion for the, profession, passion for architecture, I think is what drives all of us. So that is something that fundamentally has to be there. And then, second thing is the hunger for learning. So hunger for learning, has to be there to learn new things, so that you don't become static. Okay. And architecture is all about surprising yourselves and your clients, and, and then coming up with, continuously reinventing. So that's what I would say, that, be passionate, learn and reinvent, continuously.